don't have Hi, hello, good afternoon. I hope you guys are enjoying reInvent and you had a good lunch. Welcome to the cybersecurity panel on media and entertainment. My name is Olga Bermant. I'm leading the cyber business development practice in Israel. And I'm super thrilled and excited to have two incredible security executives with me, Brian and Steve. Brian from Amazon and Steve from the NBA. We'll be diving into some of the challenges that CISOs face today in the world of endless threats and, of course, a entertainment and sports that never sleeps, a 24/7 ecosystem. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves? And with that, also tell us a little bit about your short and long-term security challenges and what's kind of top of mind these days.
Cool. Go ahead, Steve.
Let me go first. Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Grossman. I am the Chief Information Security Officer at the NBA. I've been with the league office for the last 25 years. Last 5 years or so in the security chair. A little bit about the NBA. We are a global organization. Big differentiator for us, I would say, compared to other sports leagues, is really very much about the growth from a global perspective, right? So for us, we kind of understand that the U.S. is about 5% from a population perspective, within the world, and so we see a lot of growth opportunity, and so we have a presence in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Beijing, London. We have a couple global games coming up in January, and really in my tenure, over the last 20 plus years or so, we've been very focused internationally, as well as having relationships within China as well.
Great.
Thank you. I'm Brian Lozada. I'm with Amazon. I'm the Director of Global Media and Entertainment and Ads, Director of Security. So I say this jokingly, but I really do mean it. Amazon is the largest media company in the world that no one really realizes. When you put all of our media content together, Prime Video, Audible, Twitch, games, music, Luna, Wondery, we have a very, very large media portfolio. So my responsibility is the security of that side of the house, as well as the ad security. Been with Amazon for close to 4 years now, and just excited to be here. I hope you guys are having a great reInvent and have a conversation with Steve and Olga.
Amazing. So let's dive right in. I guess NBA, Amazon Prime, all of that involves fans, involves watchers. You guys are really revolutionizing and reinventing how fans are consuming sports and watching sports. Steve, you just migrated the NBA app that supports streaming globally to AWS. What are some of the new security challenges that you see, given the global footprint that you just mentioned across the world?
Got it. So we've been global for a very long time. I think the key is, right, when you really look to fan out or scale, what it is that you're doing from an application perspective is really to make certain that you stay to the core principles of what you need to do really when you build out a security program, right? So for us, really, regardless of the size of what it is that we're rolling out, regardless of the reach that we have, it's really staying to the core principles from a cybersecurity perspective, making sure we have the right tool sets, making sure we have the right visibility from a logging perspective to make sure that we can understand essentially what normal looks like and really be able to identify anomalies as well.
Great. Is there any specific security challenge that you could share that your team was surprised by during the migration that you succeeded to overcome?
Yeah, I would say from a surprise perspective, fortunately, we really didn't have too many, and a lot of it had to do with the support team and the partnership really working with Amazon, right? So obviously we're building out this infrastructure and this app, leveraging Amazon-based technology, working with internal Amazon expertise really gave us the opportunity to really understand how to design and put together the appropriate defense in depth strategy, right, in order to be able to address that, and really working within both Amazon-based tech as well as other technology that we had been previously using.
Great. And Brian, your team is actively working on innovation like multi-view, interactive stats, lots and lots of new innovation that maybe you can also address. How does that change your kind of threat vector? How does that change your perception on security?
Yeah, no, we really appreciate the partnership that we have with the NBA, and when this is the first year that we're streaming the NBA games on Prime Video. It's been hugely successful. We love the partnership. But we wanted to offer a different experience to our customers. And we introduced multi-view. So from one screen, a customer can see multiple games, which we think is a really, really unique experience for customers. We want to continue to bring the customer into the experience. So we think about that. And at Amazon, we work back from the customer. We looked at that and said, how can we work back, make sure that that is enabled for the customer, but security is part of that. When it comes to live streaming, you know, you go back to, like you mentioned, the core kind of like foundations of security. We think about like CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But with live streaming, the last two are incredibly important. It's that integrity of the stream and the availability of the stream. And if we're going to offer these unique experiences with multi-view, we got to make sure that it's there for the customers and that it, again, the threats when it comes to either DDoS or some sort of threat that could interrupt that live stream and impact the integrity, that's where we're focused. Not only for the customer, but for our partners with the NBA to make sure that we're giving the fans what they want, we're giving our partners what they need to get their product out there.
Amazing. Could you share maybe some of the best practices, how you've implemented these rigorous security controls?
One, we have to understand what exactly the product team wanted to drive with this. We work back from that. We want to say, how did you want to do it? And then we worked security into that process during the build cycle. Tacking security onto the end of a product is always probably the hardest thing to do. And you're really not going to be able to get the security where it needs to be. And you're going to slow down the business. But when you work with the product developers at the onset on the feature that they're trying to create, you could bake security into it. And that's the approach that we actually took. We have affinity engineers that are dedicated to the product leaders so that as they come up with these features for our partners like the NBA, that they're embedded into it throughout the entire life cycle. Makes it a lot easier, brings down the cost of security, brings down the speed of security, makes it very effective for the developers, very effective for our partners.
Steve, what about you? How does your product team and your security teams collaborate when it comes to kind of new features, new products, innovation?
Yep, so we have a very innovative team, very thought forward from a technology perspective. And so we've been a DevSecOps organization really for an extended number of years at this point. And really so for us, from the scope or the thought process of shifting left, right, and essentially building out your pipelines with security technology essentially built into that process from a SAST standpoint, from a DAS standpoint, making sure we're identifying vulnerabilities or easier, making sure that from a developer perspective, we're creating as much of a frictionless experience as possible, and really we're doing that with a good amount of collaboration from a developer perspective, right? So understanding, obviously, no one is going to understand the application better than the developer. So
correct.
Educating them on what needs to happen from a security perspective, letting them understand from a tooling standpoint what we've layered into our pipelines, and then ultimately how they need to react and respond, right? So for us, a security issue preliminarily, or at least initially, we'll set up the guardrails, we'll provide the technology, we'll lay things out of what needs to happen from a process perspective, but from an individual operational standpoint, as code is being deployed, and Brian kind of touched on a little bit of this, it's quite frequent from a features perspective. The first line of defense there, being that we've laid the program out in the proper way, is really the developer taking a look at something from a vulnerability perspective, based upon what's popped for us in that pipeline, and then we can collaborate as needed to determine, hey, are we good to go here? Does it exceed the threshold that we're concerned about or not? And so we've had a very high level of success really with that model, I would say, over the last number of years, and then stepping in with Amazon, really being able to enhance that and work with the skilled team with you guys at AWS to help us really port that into the new technology that we're utilizing today in the app.
That's awesome.
I mean, one thing that we maybe haven't really spoken about yet is data. So obviously a lot of the innovation is driven by the personalization that both of your organizations are enabling for fans. How do you think about protecting data? How do you think about the very sensitive data that you guys all kind of look at in terms of fans, but also athletes and also third parties?
Go first. So from a data perspective, Olga, you're right. We're very much a direct-to-consumer business these days. Very much about understanding who our fan is, understanding how to drive business through that data that we are collecting. to be able to cross-market from a business perspective. How many games are you attending? What merchandise are you buying? Are you a frequent consumer of the app? And if so, what features are you utilizing, right? So we try and pull that full view together, which gives us an opportunity, one, to best understand the customer so we know what to deliver for them, but also gives us the opportunity to really further expand our offering out to them, right? And so for us, when you do that, you begin to bring considerably more data in to your environment, which of course from our chairs, we're concerned about the risk aspect there of essentially what is it we need to go and do from a security perspective to make sure that we are mitigating as much risk as possible. And so for us, we map that back to a framework, right? So at the NBA, we're an ISO shop, and so that's really operationally how we're running a lot of our back office, as well as systems that support the app and the fans. And then specific to the data set, from a consumer perspective, we are on the path to SOC 2 certification, right? So important piece there. Obviously, from my chair, it's all about securing and protecting that data. From a SOC 2 perspective, and the reason really why we've gone down that path is because it's very unique in the sense that you have to collect evidence, right? And so that evidence essentially shows that you're operating at the appropriate level of security. And so for us, that certainly helps me. If I sleep at night at all, I don't know. It helps me, maybe a little bit sleep at night, where I know that from a development perspective, from an engineering perspective, and an administrative standpoint, that we are running at the appropriate level. We have the ability to produce that evidence, which mitigates the most risk from a business perspective and makes certain that we're running at the appropriate level that we need to from a cybersecurity program standpoint.
Brian, I'd love to hear also your point of view, and maybe you can also say a word about really measuring that success that Steve was talking about.
Yeah, no, totally. Great points. Listen, at Amazon, again, I mentioned it earlier, we work back from the customer. We are customer obsessed. So when it comes to that trust that the customers put in us, we do focus heavily on the data aspects from it. We look at everything from a customer journey perspective in the experience. So as the customer's logging into Prime Video, they're selecting the content, and they're hitting play. We're looking at that entire service pipeline and saying, this is where data's traversing, where all the way down to where it's being persisted, and that's where we actually drive the security controls. We have the monitoring there, we have our alerts there, and then we have our response team that if anything is an anomaly in that, we have the ability to respond pretty quickly. But we do focus on doing that data map so that we can have the right security controls in that. And that's on the customer side. But also we think about on the innovation side with the experience. When we're doing things like multi-view and we overlay that view with some analytics on the game, right? That's pretty important data as well to give to the consumer to bring them closer to the game and let them enjoy the experience a little bit more. We think about that as well, right? So you have the consumer data down to the persistence, but also the game data as it's going out to the consumer, putting security out there again for that integrity and availability out to the consumer so that they feel very comfortable that the data that they're getting is exactly what is happening, on the game time and stuff like that. So we focus very heavily on just tracking our data and making sure security is embedded there. And again, alerting and monitoring, we have very, very, very tight mechanisms to make sure that we have that in place.
Super interesting. And when we talk about organizations and we talked about scale, we talked about data, you can't not mention that you guys are multi-entity organizations. Right, Steve, you mentioned you have more than 30 NBA teams under you. Can you share a little bit about best practices and how you really create standards that are organization-wide for different teams with different kind of technical maturity and technical capability? Security has to be, as we say in AWS and Amazon, day zero, job day zero. How do you enforce that? How do you help the teams meet the standards?
Sure. So that is certainly an interesting aspect of the position, right? Because you have the league proper, right? Essentially, so anything from a league technology standpoint that ultimately, we run and we are responsible for, and we have full visibility into, right? And so I kind of split it up into, I would say, 3 core areas to put on an event like an NBA Finals game or an All-Star game or a regular season game, right? So really from a network perspective, you're splitting it into 3 different tiers, right? So ultimately, you have league-run networks, which of course we have full visibility into from a security perspective. All the expected tooling really you really would have in place there from a defensive side, as well as the red teaming and penetration testing and things that we're doing there. So that's a third of your technical environment, right? Then you also have the actual team infrastructure, right? Team networks, team technology. That's really the second piece of this puzzle. And then you have the third piece, which is really the venues where all these games are played, right? So ultimately, that is yet another third party that manages or runs that venue. In some scenarios, the owner of the NBA team, they actually are responsible for maintaining, managing, and running that facility. In other scenarios, that's outsourced, right? So you'll have a management company who is running the venue. A lot of times, these venues are shared with NHL teams, other live events and things that would be going on through that venue throughout the year. And so when you basically take those 3 components or 3 aspects and you put them together, so league, team, and venue, that's really ultimately what puts the game on. And so for us at the NBA, we have full visibility into the league-required networks, and the other 2 aspects of the scenario being the team infrastructure as well as the venue infrastructure. We need to make sure from a security perspective that they are up to the same level of security standards that we run here at the league. And so I would say a number of years ago, we really kind of took a look at the situation. Olga, you touched on it, right? We're really dealing with 30 teams, 30 different levels of maturity, 30 different perspectives and views culturally from a security perspective. And for us, our role is really to assist those teams to make sure that they have the appropriate cybersecurity controls in place so that we can all collaboratively, in a partnership, put on a safe event. And so the way that we manage that or handle that is really we set requirements. And so the team at the NBA, we took a look at essentially, what did we think was the most essential from a risk perspective? What controls did we really want to make sure we had to have in place? And so in the end, ultimately, what we did is we took a subset of ISO controls of what we thought, based upon what it is that we're doing from a live event perspective, really presented the most risk. And so we assembled that 150, and then we put the requirements in place, and then we distributed that out to the teams. And so now it's basically a combination of these scaled down ISO controls that we have in place, as well as an annual penetration test on the arenas themselves, right? So this gives us the view into those other 2/3 that we don't have the full visibility that we would normally like to, that we would require from a cybersecurity perspective. And so the way we did it was we basically initially we introduced the requirements. That's step 1. As you might expect, and then really we had to go and collect a baseline across 30 different organizations to essentially understand, hey, this is where we would like you to be, or this is where we need you to be. How far off are you from that? And so anybody who really works in the cybersecurity space would understand that there's no way that these 30 teams are anywhere close to one another. And so for the most part, they were not, right? And so some teams, of course, were in great shape, having been making that investment. Other teams needed more guidance, right? And actually needed to understand what needs to be done, right? So certainly that was an aspect to really put this program in place. And then everybody's favorite part, of course, is that we audit to that, right? So essentially that really gives us that evidence or that information so we understand that, hey, this is what this team looks like and compared to what this team looks like, and how can we help them or assist get them up to the requirement, right? And so it's, especially in cybersecurity these days, normally you're talking about things in hours and minutes, and it's tough to take 30 organizations and say, you have hours and minutes to get aligned with what it is that we need you to do. And I kind of compare it to, when you're talking about this kind of an ecosystem, it's sort of like sailing an ocean liner. Hey, we're going to make a left, and that turn's actually going to happen in however many days it takes to turn the boat. And so really we've had a great amount of collaboration from the teams, a very positive experience where we've even started to offer a level of shared services back to those teams. So if you think about like threat intelligence sharing, think about like vulnerability management or around doing penetration testing, assistance, getting views into scans from a vulnerability perspective, to really assist some of those teams with making sure that they can get up to that level from a requirements perspective. And so on the team side of things, that's primarily how we've handled it. We've had a very high level of success, I would say, over the last 24 to 36 months.
That's awesome.
And Brian, your situation is not too dissimilar in Prime Video, but you also work with different studios, different designers, creatives, various degrees of security competency. How do you manage to create a baseline?
Yeah, very similar to Steve here.
You have to disagree.
Yeah,
Hannah.
yeah. It is, so when I think about G&B and global media and entertainment as a whole, like Prime Video is completely different than what Audible is. Audible is completely different than what music is. Music is completely different than what Wondery, so on and so forth. What we did is we wanted to actually really immerse ourselves into those business units. We wanted to understand what the priorities of those business units were, and that's where we started focusing our attention. Where we can centralize, we will. But where we can't, because it is a requirement for the business, we are building with the business. I do want to be able to get to a point where I love your shared services. We do a lot of that for our builders. We want to make security for free. Like get it to the point where these builders are getting it for free during their pipeline, that they don't even notice that security is being applied in their code or being applied in their pipeline. That's where we're getting to. We have a lot of mechanisms that are driving that now. But there are very unique things that are specific to the business. Like Prime Video has, obviously content creation and delivery. So how we're working with partners and studios, they have their own unique requirements. So I have to do something very similar. I have to talk to those production teams and saying, how can we make things simple for you? How can you onboard to the Amazon Security Fabric as you're creating this, and then we can deliver that content. And it is the art of negotiation and the art of persuasion, I say, to do some of that. But the real thing is driving solutions and building solutions that makes it easy for the business to consume security. That's in the phase that we're in right now. So to get to a point where it's central, drives down the cost of security, increases the speed of security, increases the adoption of security. Again, you're not going to be able to do it everywhere because it's very unique to the business, but you have to make your security teams think in that fashion. If you try to put all of that into one area and say, hey, I'm going to manage the security of these separate business units in the same box, it's going to hurt the business. You're going to lose credibility with the business. You're not going to be able to get the right adoption of security. So you really do have to immerse yourself into the business. I think Wu-Tang said it best when they said, you don't know me, so you don't know my style. Get to know your business. Yeah. Really immerse yourself into that business so that you can customize security to do it. And again, you could drive security at the right pace.
Yeah, look, I would also
I'm not off to say that this is the first cybersecurity panel where Wu-Tang was quoted, so thank you for that.
Yeah, you got to do it.
I would also really kind of layer into what Brian is saying too. It was almost like really where we opened up, right? So here we're talking about a partnership. Us from an NBA perspective, we work with and we deal with a lot of partners, right? As you might expect, in order to be able to put these types of games on, in order to be able to get the broadcast going, of course, the way that we need it, the mobile app, things we're doing with our websites, right? So just continual business that evolves. And so we have a very significant list of third-party vendors, really, that we deal with. And so for us, we're making significant investments from a cybersecurity perspective within our own ecosystem, right? And so our expectation is that if we're going to share data with you, or we're going to ask a third party to take on the same level of responsibility for our information that we would, then our expectation is that they're going to run with the same level of maturity from a cybersecurity perspective. And so with the evolving and shifting landscape from a technology perspective, with the number of SaaS-based platforms that businesses like to layer in and integrate in order to get our jobs done, for us, there's a fairly significant focus on SSPM technology, right? So from a SaaS perspective, we're continually looking at things from a configuration perspective across each one of those SaaS-based platforms to make sure that from a security configuration standpoint, things are configured optimally, right? So that's one aspect of how we're managing and handling that. Really the whole posture management aspect there. In addition to that, and what we're also doing is we are essentially inquiring via questionnaires, because everybody loves those. That seems to be like a really big thing in the business now, right? Where, hey, here's 250 questions for you to answer, so we can get a view into what it is that you're doing from a cyber maturity perspective. And so for us, we're really very much about right sizing, right? Trying to get what is the important information. So we really try and keep it down to, in the area probably of 50 questions as opposed to those 250 question juggernauts. But really between the responses to the questionnaires, getting the visibility into what things look like from a SaaS security posture management perspective, and then also we're doing a level of like attack surface management, scans out to our third-party vendors, right? So we're getting the view on what do they look like from an externally facing asset perspective. Are there issues that they need to address, right? And so really kind of using these three pillars and making sure each one of those requirements across each one of those three pillars is met before we'll onboard a vendor, right? So for us, that's really helping us make sure that this entire ecosystem is operating at a level that we would expect it to be, regardless as to whether or not it's resident inside of our cloud or resident inside of our vendor or supplier's cloud as well.
Brian, is there anything that you want to add in terms of kind of practice that you see from our side?
Third party, I mean, we operate so much with our third parties and our vendors. They are core components of any organization, but in media and entertainment specifically. We have a lot of partners that we work with. And very similar to Steve, we're reaching out to the partners, we're understanding where they're at. The thing is, when it comes to the questionnaires and the reviews, those are point in time. So it's always, you got to look at that risk perspective. Like, this is a point in time thing, you're going to visit it again in a year, but what can you do in the interim to have that continued visibility on how that partner or that vendor is actually working with you? Again, we are trying so hard to really bring as many of those vendors into the Amazon security fabric and make it easier for our productions, our partners, our teams to use tooling that's in-house, and where it can't, and we do have to rely on that third party, having that tight relationship so that we can have that visibility. We like to have, for certain third parties, we actually like to have the monitoring of our data in their environment. We control the monitoring. Like, we have the 24-hour, 24/7 monitoring. We have eyes on glass and hands on keyboard 24/7, so that we're not reliant on the third party to notify us of something happening. Like, we actually have the ability to do that. Again, for certain third parties to do that, for certain data that we're storing over there, we do that specifically, but it's just part of this media and entertainment landscape. You're always going to have a very large component of your supply chain is going to be third parties.
Sounds interesting. And we've been talking now for quite some time, and we haven't really discussed AI yet, and this whole continuous monitoring.
We have to discuss it, right? It's mandatory.
We will. This whole continuous monitoring is obviously significantly facilitated by the use of AI. So given that, and I'd love to talk the duality of AI, the misuse of it, and also how you guys use to help protect yourselves. But maybe talk a little bit about, Brian, you had the mic just now, talk a little bit about really how your security practice has evolved over the last, say, 12 to 24 months when AI has really entered production and production in a significantly more bigger adoption rate.
Yeah, great question. I think we obviously have to talk about AI and how we look at it. AI it's a humanity-changing technology, right? So it's not something that, from a security perspective, that we could ignore, right? So the one thing when we really started embracing it is like, how do we look at it from a business perspective? There's going to be, how's it going to be used internally to speed up how our security engineers or our developers are putting out their services? How are our content creators and our partners going to be using it to either develop content and drive different type of services that we want to work with them? And we started working back from those experiences. And we're saying, how can we help builders? How can we help security engineers responsibly use this technology to make their jobs, again, faster, make it easier for them to actually do some of this work? And we have created tools internally at Amazon to help our builders do this and help our security engineers doing it. We're going to continue to invest. We announced this week the security agent, which I think is absolutely amazing. So if you guys haven't checked it out, you should absolutely check it out. It really it's a force multiplier for your teams to actually drive all of that work that perhaps a security analyst used to do, a security agent can do, and again, get you a lot more closer to solving that problem at speed. But again, we're going to continue to invest there to use this technology to enable our business a little bit more. But then, how do we help our content creators use it responsibly? I think about it, and we're using it, our content creators using it, so are threat actors, right? So we have to put that hat on, is like, how are threat actors going to use this technology, and what do we do to put controls in place to monitor how they're actually doing it? I mean, the phishing attacks that we're seeing, some of the DDoS attacks that we're seeing, they are being powered by this technology. And we have to prepare ourselves and evolve our security programs and evolve our security talent to think differently on how this technology is going to be used internally, and then again, how it's going to be used externally. The power of this technology for threat actors, it makes the attack cheaper, and it makes it faster, and it makes it at a bigger scale, right? So we need to think of the same way as how we could use it to make our detections quicker. We could make our detections scale and make the cost of that go down as well from a security perspective.
And so while you're on this, the technology is constantly evolving. How do you think about the next, say, 12 months? 24 months seems even too far out in the AI world. How do you think about the next 12 months, and what kind of tools, what kind of practices are you putting in place to prepare your teams for these challenges that are ahead?
Definitely agent-based, and really focusing on how the teams are using agents across all of the different pipelines to help either give visibility or actually do fixes within that pipeline. We're going to be heavily driving the security agent use across the team. I think that's going to be a big core focus area for us, is to really use those to leverage a lot of, again, shortening the time to respond, shortening the time to due diligence, and really push security as part of that pipeline with the less human intervention as possible. I really want to remove any sort of security friction for builders. And if I can have an agent do a lot of that, that's where we're actually going to be focusing on.
Steve, I would love to hear how you guys think about AI and how you have implemented it inside your security stack, and maybe give us your perspective on how do you measure its success? What are the metrics that you were thinking about? Have we implemented the correct agentic security programming?
Got it. So you said over the next 12 months. I tend to think in terms of like the next 12 minutes. But
Let's do 12 minutes.
We're talking about a space, obviously, that is just continually evolving. It's probably totally changed while we're up here on the stage. But for us, we could talk about this in so many different aspects. I would probably start on the defensive side first. And so for me, I think about it in the context of really cybersecurity engineering, and really the mindset that cybersecurity engineers bring to technical problems, right? Where I think that really puts us in a much more fortunate position, really, than other aspects of the business, right? We could certainly talk about, and will, the offensive side of things, but from a defensive perspective, it really becomes about how can I automate, how can I make things move considerably faster than they were previously, because we understand what's happening from an offensive perspective and what the threat actors are really doing with Gen AI, and Brian touched a lot on that. But I think in the context of something like vulnerability management, right? We all sort of understand that vulnerability management historically runs very slowly, right? You have to scan everything. You have to understand where the vulnerabilities are. You have to prioritize. You have to inform everybody that, hey, this is going to be the series of patches that we're going to roll out. You have to test, right, to make sure that you're not going to have an issue or a problem. And so that creates a very nice opportunity for threat actors, as we know, because they know we have to move considerably slower than they do. And so to me, it's in this example, right, how do you use Gen AI to make that process faster? And so there are different things, that we actually either are running in production today or will be very soon, which gives us the opportunity, leveraging Gen AI, to essentially take and via an LLM build out what our network infrastructure looks like. And then we layer into that and we add to that, essentially getting an understanding to what the vulnerabilities that have been identified from the tool set perspective, and we layer that into the workflow as well. And what that actually does is it gives us the opportunity to reprioritize the vulnerabilities specific to our network infrastructure, right? So now ultimately what I'm doing is, I'm going out to my DevOps guys and I'm saying, hey, look, from a vulnerability perspective, here's where we are. But for us at the NBA specifically, these are the vulnerabilities that present the most risk. So I need you to address those first, right? And so that helps us get there faster because now we're reprioritizing really based upon the needs of what's specific to our organization, right? So things that used to really operate in terms of generalities are now very much operating in a set of specifics that give us an opportunity to move faster to better defend ourselves, right? So that's one aspect. Another aspect I would really say is on the SecOps side, right? So over the last 36 months, maybe even a little bit longer, you're building out playbooks, right? From a SOAR perspective, building in automation. Building playbooks takes time, and so now what you see is a lot of technology that via Gen AI is really automating that process, right? Where you no longer need to say, hey, this is what I'm doing from a process perspective. I need to get A and B and then C done. How do I build it? How do I write it? How do I test it? I then have the opportunity to leverage a Gen AI-based solution for that level of optimization.
Plus one, I think the security operations is a huge opportunity. So plus one there, we're experimenting with that as well. Like think about when a security analyst actually has to go do diligence either on a VM, like a vulnerability management, right? And they're saying, does this vulnerability really apply? Like actually having an agent go do that diligence and do it. And then to your point, then reprioritizes, this is the exact thing that actually needs to be fixed. We're gonna be able to go so deeper and quicker with agents to drive that, again, really back down to the developer, to the business owner where they need to make the change. So incredibly excited for 2026 as we expand throughout that in GME and ads.
Sounds great. So as we spoke about AI brings the flip side of it that obviously threat actors are also implementing it. And in your line of business, entertainment and media, we see a lot of challenges with deepfakes and misuse of content creation. How do you guys think about really protecting your brand, protecting the user experience, protecting the fan experience, still having the ability that the fans trust what they see when the NBA logo is on the top left, right of their screen or their multi-screens? What's some of the thoughts that go through your head these days, and what are you implementing, Steve?
Got it. So I certainly see in this area a lot of technology that is evolving rapidly from a deep fake identification perspective. And so for us, there's a few different vendors who we are working with today, actually operating and walking through active POCs to essentially scan social media environments, compare and identify based upon content that we have sitting in an LLM to really identify a deep fake, whether it's via the video quality, whether it's the human characteristics that exist sitting within the LLM from a comparative perspective to help identify deep fakes. So there's really a few different technologies out there for us. It is a concern, certainly across all the social media platforms. You're seeing many deep fakes. For us, we have a lot of players, of course, we are concerned about their well-being. A lot of executives we're concerned about their well-being. And really, it is a priority for us. And you have the aspect, I would say, of identifying the deep fake, but then you also really have the automation aspect of doing it at scale, I would say, right? So that's another fairly significant challenge for us. Initially, it's human in the loop, and so you have it's slower, there's more interaction. But we'd love to be able to get to a place from an automation perspective where you can compare, identify, auto pull down within a workflow without necessarily having to have that additional analysis or review, right? So that's really today where we are. Certainly we're aware of it. It's something we're working toward being able to address and really out there scanning the environment pretty closely to identify really third parties out there who can assist us.
Brian, you work with all of the sports leagues. Like we had last year NHL on stage with us, and of course the NFL and NBA. What are some of the best practices, but also kind of thoughts?
You just want to tell her we're the best, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Of course. Goes without saying.
Yeah, of course.
What are some of the best practices that you use across the different sports leagues to implement AI misuse and misinformation, diffuse
Yeah.
information?
Totally. I think AI has, again, given threat actors a huge opportunity to do deep fakes at just at an alarming rate. There are so many open source tools right now that you could go and use to create kind of like deep fakes. The first year that we streamed the NFL, was 3 years ago, we had a team that we created that was doing very reactive approach to finding these streams, and we used AWS recognition, and the top right of the screen had the TNF logo on it, the Thursday Night Football logo, and we actually trained the model to find that logo. We were the only ones that had that logo. So if we saw it off of a stream that was not on Prime Video, we automatically had a takedown notice go out, and it would take it down. And that was the first time we started thinking like we could do this at scale. We could do this pretty quickly to identify it, but it's reactive. And what we're doing now with the team is like, how can we get to the point where we're stopping that from happening, right? And we are putting in some investment on looking at that type of technology and stuff like that. But when I think specifically about deep fakes, if you think about information is the essence of humanity. Everyone is making a decision, whether it's watching the NBA or anything else, you're making it off of information you're getting off of media. And now that you have AI that's being able to alter that and not really give you the opportunity to make that right decision or anything like that, there is a real big risk to how information is being synthesized by humans now. And I do think as an industry, as security practitioners, we need to start thinking about that differently. Like, what is the technology that we need to implement to give that integrity to the stream that it can't be deep faked? Or if it is that it's identified quickly, like, is there a way to start driving more watermarking in live, more watermarking in some of the content, so that, again, as a consumer sees it, they say, I know that this is a deep fake versus this is something that came from, the Prime Video platform, or how the content creator wanted that to be distributed. Because that's a risk to our content creators. They don't want their content being altered and deep faked and then shared on social media, and somebody's gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna see that series anymore, I know what happens. That's not, so we're actively looking at how do we drive down that area of deepfakes. I think, to your point, the space is incredibly fluid. It is gonna continue to be changing rapidly. So again, as industry practitioners, that it's on us to start putting a real big focus on how do we innovate there and really fix how the industry is gonna be thinking about this in the next 18 months.
What are some of the real industry thought leadership that need to happen? Because I believe this has to be a team sport, right? We have to work together as one team to be able to combat these, to be able to identify, to be able to really keep that trust of fans. So what are some of the practices that you guys are thinking about that need to happen today, that need to happen in another few months, years?
I'll start. I'd say, like, you mentioned it earlier, like, the information sharing aspect is incredibly important. Steve and I work very closely. We share information. We share it with the rest of the leagues as well. Dave in the NHL and Tomas NFL. We have that information sharing kind of capability. It's incredibly important to keep that and to up-level. How we're seeing the threats that either piracy, deep fakes, how they're stealing content, sharing that so we can say this is how the threat actor is hitting one of the platforms, and then we can protect all of our platforms, all of our infrastructure as we're delivering the content I think is out there. I think that's one. The second angle of it is we have to start getting down to, as we're developing content, how can we start putting, again, either those silent watermarks or something in there that prevents that type of deep fake from happening. I know there's a few companies that you're working with, they're on the reactive side, but I do see a lot of companies that are starting to get into that. How do we get into the content creation and anti-deep fake areas of that? And there are a lot of companies out there right now, like there are some social media platforms that you'll see that'll say this was created by AI. Love it when it's an ad. But if it's content that was deep faked and then changed, there's no, like, we have to come together in the industry and change that. Yeah. Like, we got to make sure that we're protecting content because, again, humans are making decisions off of this, and this is really, information is the essence of humanity. And if you can't trust it, it's going to be bad just all around.
Steve, I'd love to have your take and also think about what would be the different roles between content providers and content creators. So where is that dichotomy?
Got it. I would reiterate that, right? There's there's no competition in security, right? So really when it comes to collaboration with peers, right, whether it's across our broadcast partners or our other sports leagues, there's continual information sharing when it comes down to really what are the indicators of compromise, what it is that we really should be looking for. It's really an issue, I would say, across the industry because of the speed of how quickly everything is moving, that we're all really collaboratively trying to figure that out, right? And I think as the technology develops, really from an identification perspective, I think that's going to help us to really cross-collaborate to get to a place where we can have an industry standard. We're certainly not there now, right? And we're out there looking for solutions that we feel that will work well. And I think what we're seeing right now is a lot of one-off really type of solutions, not anything that's really, I would say, industry grade ready, right? And
I agree.
I feel like we'll get there.
We will.
But it is something that, we talked a little earlier about, shifting security left, being out in front of these issues. And with a lot of what it is that we do today, we're able to do that. I think here, we're kind of in the process of figuring out how do we shift this left from a security perspective because it's also new to us, right? So it is absolutely a challenge. Certainly we are reacting, and maybe reacting is kind of the key word there, right?
Yeah,
it's really reacting in a way to try and help design or put together what's appropriate, and not just for the NBA and Amazon, but really industry-wide across really all the media and entertainers, I would say.
Plus one.
Yeah, makes sense. So as we talk about AI, and exactly as you say, this is a really new world, and we're all reacting to it as we go. What are some of the new skill sets and new mindsets that you believe CISOs, security practitioners, have to adopt going forward into the future? And really maybe even talk about the transition role that you see as the Chief Information Security Officer, driving business, driving innovation. Where do you see that meet you?
Got it. So for me, I think the job just got a lot harder, right? Ultimately, most of these architectures.
Way less.
Yeah, I don't know. If it wasn't hard before, maybe now it's a little harder. Maybe it's a lot harder. And so a lot of it is really, right, one is understanding the complexity of Gen AI-based infrastructure and all of the different tiers of, Brian was talking about agents, right? Well, agents are all relatively new, right? And then you talk about every organization I have a conversation with, they're all rolling out MCP servers, right? And the MCP server technology itself, I don't know if it's 18 months old, right? And so when you have a tech that is that new, and look, I used to work on that side of the business, just making it operate is a challenge, right? And so now if I can make something operate to deliver for the business, if that's tier one or priority one, from a security perspective, it's then having to address the complexity of making sure these things are rolled out in really in as secure a manner as possible. And the challenge is, on the business side, everybody is concerned that they're missing whatever the next step is from a Gen AI perspective, and the mindset is very much, how do I push forward? How do I get there? And what's the latest technology that's going to help me do it? And I better not miss out on that, right? And so from our perspective, you just at a granular level, when you look at the issues with MCP and actually the ability to map back from an identity perspective what that agent is doing, it's very complicated today, right? And so you have issues where you have a single account that's carrying out many functions, and it's not actually tied back from an identity management perspective back to the person who's actually issuing the inquiry, right? And so for us, we're all about collecting information, right? We're all about having visibility, and this architecture is flawed, and so you really don't have the ability to do that today, right? And so for me, that's really the concern of sort of what's next, right? In the security space, big pushes, enterprise browsers, right? These kind of things that have been rolled out. For me as a practitioner, sure, of course, that's something I'm interested in, right? I have a very mobile workforce. We travel to all these events. That's something that I'd like to do. And then you see, hey, guess what? Now there's like agent-based browsers, right? It's going to buy all the stuff for you, and you're just going to sit there. It's going to magically book your vacation, and everything's going to be great. And really, for us, to me, it's how do you get in front of that, right? And if I'm pushing, for example, toward an enterprise browser, and now everybody has an agent-based browser, it just makes my sell job harder to get anybody into the secure model of where I need them to be. And so I think from a chief information security officer perspective, it's how do I communicate these issues, right, to the business? How do I make sure they understand that this is the risk or the level of risk or the percentage of risk that as an organization we're willing to take, which enables us to innovate at the speed of our business, right? And so to me, that is the big challenge, right? Because if I could predict what was coming next in Gen AI, I'd probably have a very different job. To me, it's these things are rolling out every 15 minutes, right, or whatever it is, exaggeration, but then it becomes, hey, operationally, we made it work. You guys go figure out how to secure it. And it's very much an opposite mindset for I would say like a traditional technology platform where we've kind of gotten everybody to the point of hey, I can set an objective toward shifting everything left. The technology exists for me to be able to do that, right? It's just how do I educate my workforce? How do I get everybody to that place? Whereas on the Gen AI side of things, there's still a lot of things really I would say that are being defined. And so from a CISO perspective, I think core principles remain the same. I think you need to apply them from a security perspective in the same way. Again, I feel, at least within my organization, we have a very talented group of people who are really, they understand problems, they understand limitations. In fact, they excel at solving them. It's just the pace that they're coming in. How do we potentially utilize the new technology to keep up with the speed of really what these rollouts are?
And Brian, you mentioned before that you'd like to implement more agents into your environment, free up some of your time of your valuable engineers. How are you thinking about going forward, adapting or really even changing your teams to adapt into the changing landscape?
Yeah, I think it's about adaptability for sure. I think this is a really interesting time. A lot of organizations have FOMO right now. They think they're going to miss out on that AI kind of like thing that's going to help them go through it, right? I think as security practitioners, we need to look at this is a time that we can evolve how our security engineers, how our security teams use this technology to enable the business as well as secure the business. We got to look at it, and this is the evolution time. This is the time where you have to rethink how you are working with your talent across your team and enable them to actually, test this out and use it. And, we have a leadership principle, learn and be curious. I really want my team to be all over how they're going to use this technology to drive their work different, right? Avoiding it's not going to be the right solution, but it's a time for them to recognize as a team that now is the time to evolve and how we think security in a Gen AI kind of like age. I think agentic is just one small piece of what this technology can totally do for us. So I do see us really reshaping the workforce over the next, you said 15 minutes, like it has to, the workforce needs to recognize that they have to constantly be learning because this technology is evolving. They need to evolve with it because the business is expecting to be able to use this to drive the business forward, and security needs to keep that pace. We need to innovate at the pace. Security needs to innovate at the pace of the business, right? Not the other way around. I think a lot of security practitioners were doing it the other way around. This technology gives us the opportunity to do that, do it at scale, and really, really retrain our workforce so that they can leverage this to keep pace with the business, even push the business forward. Like I say this, and I really mean it. As security practitioners, our job is to enable the business to take risk. I want the business to take risk. Those who don't take risk are always chasing those that do, right? So as security practitioners, how can I help the business take a risk? I have to learn and be curious. I got to be fail fast, innovate, try new things, and push your workforce to help the business that way.
And so this is an interesting topic because obviously, again, the ecosystem is evolving really fast. Many of the security teams in-house prefer to build something by themselves, for themselves, because then they have full control. Where are you guys, given the fast-pacedness of everything, where are you in terms of build versus buy? How comfortable are you to bring in new solutions, potentially emerging solutions into your stack and kind of let it play out? Or do you prefer to really build by yourself, understand the ecosystem, understand the landscape, and know what you've built is really 100% yours and secure?
Yeah, so for me, I think really the key is integration, right? You're going to have products that are out there when you're building your kind of your defense in depth strategy. We know we're going to have new issues, right? From a security perspective, we just spent a lot of time talking about them, and so what I expect is that really from a third-party buy perspective is really going to be the position, at least initially, where you're going to go to solve these very new issues. I think when it comes to the build aspect, it's not so much ultimately what we build from scratch. There's an aspect to that from a threat hunting perspective, or a data warehousing standpoint. But to me, it's a lot about what am I buying, and then from a technical perspective, what do I have to do to integrate that into my existing stack so that I'm going to pick up that level of security from a feature perspective while also feeding it into my entire ecosystem so I have the visibility that I need. So it's a little bit of a combination there, I would say.
Yeah, that sounds great. Brian, do you want to add? And we can open up for questions for the last few minutes if anyone wants. But
Yeah, I depending on the use case. We're a big builder shop. We like to build, but there are unique use cases where I would prefer to talk to a vendor at that particular point, or work with emerging startup that is that's looking at something differently that we haven't thought of. So I'm more on the build than buy side, but when I do buy, I really do like looking at emerging startups and saying how can we start looking at implementing them here. And again, given GME and ads unique landscape, sometimes we do need to actually look at third parties because it's just how unique the business is. So I'm open to speaking to evolving tech startups.
sounds great. So I want to open up the floor for questions if there are any. We still have a few more minutes. Any brave souls? So while there's somebody thinking about questions, maybe before we wrap up, is there any kind of predictions? And I know we talked about 15 minutes to 12 months. You choose the time frame. Any predictions that you believe that we haven't yet discussed, or anything that you think is really going to revolutionize or alter the security landscape as we know today?
Brian, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I think we have a tenet in GME and ads called DREAM. Data rules everything around me, right? And I think that we'll be able to drive a lot more of our decisioning on the right security outcomes for the business when we really leverage data in the right way. And I think in the media and entertainment and ads space, as we continue to really focus on creating unique experiences and leveraging that data to enable the business to either offer new experiences, new features for the customers, it's really making sure that data has that opportunity to tell that customer story. And I think in the next few years, we're going to see a lot more how Gen AI is powering that and really, really pushing the envelope with doing that. I also think that in media and entertainment, we're probably going to see a lot more of synthetic data or content created with Gen AI, which is going to be a unique, I think for the consumer. It's going to be a unique thing for platforms that are delivering that as well. How is it received? How is it used? How is it able to continue to monetize and expand from there? I think those are going to be very big areas over the next 12 months, I would say, not even that you're going to start probably, 15 minutes. You're going to start seeing that in the next 12 months a lot more. I think companies are going to be around that angle of it.
Excellent. I would say that the rate of innovation is so fast, and that we are putting so much technology out there today that I don't think businesses are leveraging it today. I think there's a lot of opportunity for really businesses to take a look at the existing technology today, set a business case going forward, and then be able to implement from that perspective, right? I had touched on a little bit earlier sort of the Gen AI-based use cases that we had. And look, we handled it in the finite way of we had a lot of technical resources at our disposal. We knew ultimately what it was that we wanted to build. We set a goal, an objective to get there, and a timeline, and then we were able to accomplish that goal. I think on the business side, the skill sets are a bit different. And so I think they're beginning to look at this technology, understand what it is supposed to become, and I think a lot of it over the next 12 to 18 months is going to be about really beginning to leverage or utilize what's been put out there from an agentic AI perspective, and how do we get it to integrate into existing business flow and really then realize all of the benefits of what it is that's being put out there today and what's being built, right? Because to me, you have aspects of the business that you're putting these tools in front of them, and it's sort of like, now what, right? Like I understand I'm supposed to be able to innovate, but what does that mean? How do I take that next step? Hey, can you assist us with being able to get there? And I think the more you set the roadmap, the more you define these digestible goals, the more benefit you get from the technology, right? And so to me, I think there's going to be a lot of that happening over the next 12 to 18 months. Hey, now that we've put the technology out there, let's really have serious conversations about how to leverage it.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you both for a wonderful and insightful discussion. And I look forward to one next year.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.